Welcome to A Canadian Investing in the U.S., a podcast and YouTube channel focused on Canadians buying real estate with host Glenn Sutherland.
Welcome to another episode of A Canadian Investing in the U.S. This week, my guest is Steve Cody. Steve, tell us a bit about yourself and we'll jump right into this.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for having me on the show, Glenn. Lifelong entrepreneur, basically left school in grade 10, had a kind of dyslexia issue. Didn't realize it at the time, of course, but my grandfather had saved up like $1,200 for me to go to university. So I knew I wasn't going to university. I said, can I take the money, buy a squeegee, a bucket, and a ladder, and start a window cleaning company? And basically that's what I did. And kind of that's where my career started. Yeah. And, went on to build and sell 6 different rental companies. So think like Bobcat, scaffolding, swing stages, party. Had a lot of fun doing that. And about 8 years ago, kind of converted over to the tech industry. And that's what we're doing now.
Okay. Tell me a bit about this transition to the tech industry and how this goes to shared living.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's makes it like a bit of a heavy story, I guess, to get into, right off the hop. But I mean, what happened was, so June 2013, we had 3 different companies on the go. So we had Cody Party Rentals, we had franchise locations across Canada, we had Monster Halloween. I think we had 26 locations. So they're pop-up stores, that open September, October, across Canada. And we had just started a franchise system called Cody Mobile, like auto detailing. Okay. They come to your house, and my son passed away in June, and we have 5 kids, and I ended up in bed for about 9 months. And through that process, basically had to have a fire sale on the 3 companies. At the end of it, didn't have a heck of a lot, and but we had this technology that we had built. I had one guy working for me for years, just kind of building out this technology to help us run our businesses, and we turned that into a business. And that's how I got into tech.
Well, no, that's genius though. Just to reuse it, recycle it. Why start over? Why start off?
Exactly.
It sounds like you build a lot of businesses. So usually there's something that authentically comes off of each one, right?
Big time, for sure.
Yeah. So transition us. How does that go into bunking?
Yeah, well, I mean, we had built a company called Ruckify. So it was the largest rent anything marketplace. You can rent your canoe, you could kind of rent anything out on it, okay. which is a really cool platform. Left that company last year, and not long after I left it, like the year before that, I'd kind of heard Elon Musk talk about Starlink, and I don't know if you know Starlink, but all these satellites up in the sky, and he was saying, I'm going to have the whole world connected with Wi-Fi basically by 2025. And when I heard that, I'm thinking, man, like that's going to change the world, like that's going to change everything. And I didn't know I'd be doing anything else, but I thought if I ever do anything else, it'll have to be riding in those coattails. So that's kind of, I guess, where the seed got planted. And then the next thing was my son and daughter, so 23 and 26, they had this really good idea. They were going to head off to Tofino, so surf town, west coast of BC. And they were going to go for 3 months. They were going to work from there, surf, play, do whatever, until they found out the Airbnb was going to be $6,000 a month. So, yeah, and they couldn't afford it. And so I said, well, rent the thing on Airbnb and then go to Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or something and, rent out the couches, rent out the extra rooms, and you get enough people living there, maybe you live for free. So then my daughter pipes up. She says, well, what about axe murders and how do people pay? So a couple of good questions.
When I started investing in the U.S., I did it by myself and had to go through the growing pains of doing that. GlennSutherland.com/coaching. A 12-week coaching program done 1 hour per week over Zoom from the comfort of your own home. Classes are kept to 5 people to be able to answer everyone's questions. Shortcut the process. Make fewer mistakes. Curriculum available at GlennSutherland.com/coaching.
So, then we kind of just thought, well, there's got to be like a marketplace or somewhere for shared living where at least I can go vet people and make sure that they're not axe murderers, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Couldn't find anything. So we thought that was kind of interesting. Next thing was my daughter, she's a TikTok influencer. So she's like, well, if we're going to do this, I want to do collaborative living. And I'm like, well, what the hell's collaborative living? And she's like, well, that's where TikTokers live together and they collaborate. And oh, that's kind of cool. And my son, he's from tech, he's a product manager. And he's like, hang on a second, like they've closed our offices. We're never going back to the office. If I'm going to do this, I want to live with people from the software industry. I want to learn, I want to mentor, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So then I kind of thought, well, like that's like themed living. So had never ever occurred to me. So anyways, kind of thought about it all for a bit, came back to him and I said, you know what? I think I have an idea. I said, we can build this marketplace. This word bunking had come up. And we'll call it bunking.com.
Yep.
And the way it could work for you guys is, you'd go to Airbnb, you'd rent that place for $6,000 a month, you'd come back to bunking. One of you would become the host or the organizer. So say my daughter's the host. So she starts out by creating what we call is a bunking pod. And she says, my pod's for 8 people. The theme of my pod is collaborative living for TikTokers. The rules to get into my pod, you have to have a successful criminal background check done through bunking. You have to have a successful credit check done through bunking. You got to be double vaxxed. There's no smoking. So whatever she wants the rules to be to join her social pod, she puts them there. And then she would start to curate or set out the characteristics of the people she wants to live with. So we're all between 20 and 30. We're all female. We all go to bed really late. We all love to sleep in. Nobody here cooks. We eat out. And, we've got 2 couches, $25 a night, $100 a week. However she wants to set up the accommodation, she could do that. So that's like one example, just like that's how the problem started and how it was solved. And, now you think about other use cases and, we've got a lot of people work for us, students coming over from India, and I've kind of heard the horror stories. And these people, they're so brave. They come over, they're young, they don't know the language, they don't know the culture. Their parents have paid somebody $2,000 a month rent. They don't know if it's a scam. So with bunking, they could actually look for a bunking pod with people of same language, maybe people of similar culture. There's secure payment processing. The money's held in escrow until you show up, kind of thing. So, so that's kind of where it's evolving to. So now it's, where we're getting like requests for, I want to do Golden Girls living, or, like ladies 50 plus, or I want to do Margaritaville living, or, so it's just, we've got like a lot of like Shopify, we want to set up a bunking pod in Costa Rica, and, we want people to go there. So
yeah.
At the end, the more we looked into it was, okay, you take a place, any place, could be a yacht, doesn't have to be a house, but if I take a house and I rent out by the room or by the bed, right away, I'm going to get a 30 to 40% revenue bump. And I think if we look at the business, why isn't it happening now? There's no real good software to help manage that like that availability on that one bed in a 4-bed room type of thing, right? So maybe even a different rate for that one bed. So with bunking, it totally manages that. So you could have a room with 8 beds, different rate for each bed, and it'll manage the availability of each bed independently. So
yeah, it kind of reminds me of like the early days of Airbnb, where they started off with the couch surfing kind of life, but it's a little different. Because that's my original question was. I was like, how is this different than original Airbnb? But I get it now with the pods and you're subletting, and I do get it. It is different.
It's a social network. It's like a marketplace on top of marketplaces in a way, right?
Yeah.
So you could own the house, you could want to do student living.
Yep.
We've had people like that, maybe you want to learn Spanish or whatever, like language homes, those, there's just a whole bunch of different reasons to help connect like-minded people. So we did some early research. We did about 8 weeks. We hired a PhD out of Brazil. He's a professor there. And we spent 8 weeks just looking online and saying, like, what groups are already trying to connect, like interest-based groups, what, like they're trying to connect and they're trying to do this, but it's not really working. They can't really trust each other. No way to send money, you know? So what we came up with was about 12 main categories of interest groups and about 110 subcategories. So if you think language, think religion, think culture, think accessibility, think yoga, you know, vegan. So there's all this different reasons that people either want to live or travel together. They want to connect with like-minded people.
Okay. So, and where we started, where you started with this was with the axe murders and the COVID. In order to counter that, you said credit checks, background checks, your vaccine passport type of thing. Is there, if they're just setting up an account, I'm guessing that there's a fee just to get all those paperwork done.
Oh, yeah. So the way it works is, so you go onto the platform completely free. You want to create a bunking pod, you want to be a host, totally free. The only thing you ever pay is the credit card processing. So if you set a place up and the place generates $2,000 a month for you, it's all yours, less the credit card processing fee. From the guest point of view, when they come on the platform, totally free. If I'm going to join your bunking pod, only if you've made it a rule that anybody joining your bunking pod needs to get a criminal background check done, then I would go back to my profile. I pay $70. It's an instant check that's done, and that sits on your profile for a year. So now you've got kind of a bit of social credibility, no different than the credit check, right? So you don't want people pinging you all the time, like pinging your credit all the time. So you can do this credit check once and it sits on your profile, you know. But if we go back to the beginning, like our target persona is a lady named Jordan. She's 27. She's an entrepreneur. She wants to kind of travel the world and work. So it's really ultimately at the end of the day, the whole bunking is built to make sure she has a really good, safe experience. So, you know, maybe Jordan, she doesn't want to ever join a bunking pod where everybody in it hasn't had a criminal background check done. You and I, maybe it doesn't matter, right?
Okay. And then
it could be totally free.
Is there insurance that you have to have as running bunking or whatever? I know, like, I have an Airbnb, or actually it's been switched to a VRBO, but for that, if something happens, I do, like, when tenants damage stuff, I do a claim through Airbnb or VRBO. Do you guys have to carry insurance, that kind of same thing?
Yeah. So we're going to offer the same thing. So, but we'll offer host insurance, guest insurance, nomad insurance as well. So we've got a nomad partner. That's all built into the platform.
How do you get paid?
Yeah. So the way we make money is, and I forgot to mention that. So when the guest pays the host, so say you're $500 to rent the room for the week, right? They pay you $500 and they pay a 10% service fee to the platform.
Okay. All right.
So they're paying $550. And early research showed that people are quite happy to pay the 10% because of the value they're getting. Where else can you go to connect with like-minded people? And then if you add the safety in on that, I can read your reviews. If you don't have reviews, you can get recommendations from people in your network. So there's a way to help build credibility for everybody within the platform.
Okay. And I think I know the answer to this, but how does someone who's like me, a real estate investor, how do they take advantage of this whole system?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. So I think, like, we've had a couple of the big brokerages reach out, and the thing I keep hearing, even mortgage brokers saying, we've got this pool of investors. They used to buy townhomes or something smaller, but now the townhomes are kind of priced out. They can't re-rent them. So maybe an alternative is they consider chair living, right? So taking that townhome, instead of renting it to a family, maybe it's a 4-bedroom, turn the basement into a bedroom, and now you're renting out 5 bedrooms. So your revenue is going to go up significantly, and you've got a platform that's going to help totally manage it for you. And when you connect people that are like-minded, the chance of long-term success and retention of those people in the place is much stronger.
Mm-hmm. And where my mind's going too, just because one of the reasons that I stopped investing in Canada and I've switched to landlord-friendly states. I did some quotations if you're listening to this. But landlord-tenant board, you're doing short-term rentals, so you can get around that whole thing, right? So even if you, where my mind's going is, even if you had, like, say, an Ontario property, you probably could rent it out by the room, so you could do a rooming house this way, or you could even, if you're, it's just probably a monthly with a renewal every month, even, or every week.
You can set it up on the platform however you'd like. So you can set it up as a 1 month, 1 week, 1 day. You can put in your minimum rental term, what you want to charge for whatever the different period is. So even if you wanted to have a weekend rate or anything like that. So, and if you look, when we talk to like the student landlords, they love it because they get to create this bunking pod. They know the student's probably moving out after 9 months or so. So now they've got, it's already built in where they can continue renting the place out to somebody. So, they can extend kind of that revenue as an option.
That's interesting. No, I like it. Anything else I should have asked you about bunking before?
Yeah, well, I think like another interesting thing, because you brought up, in terms of the Landlord Tenant Act and whatnot, like, we even question in some cases, like, are people paying for the experience to be part of the bunking pod, or are they paying for the accommodation, right? So we see this more as a social network. So you're actually paying to connect with other people. So example, if I'm a surf instructor and I get a place down in Costa Rica, maybe buy the place or even VRBO it or whatever, but then put it on bunking, and I've got 10 people living with me, but I'm giving surf instructions at the same time. So I've got a value add. I don't know, like, are people paying for surfing, or are they paying for sleeping, right? So there's kind of an argument. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out for us.
And I'm just thinking, like, if you were going to basically, like, if I was going to go down to Costa Rica, rent an Airbnb, and then rebunk it out, that same thing. Tell me if I'm wrong or not. I'm thinking that I have to be on site, right, for the Airbnb part of it in order to re-rent out the other parts of it. I couldn't do like an Airbnb arbitrage sort of thing where you grab an Airbnb all over the world and then re-rent it as a bunking and split it up. Or I don't know, is there rules or regulations to that?
No, there just has to be a host. So now what we're doing is we're kind of bringing, so think about, like, when we look at bunking, we think, dating app. So think Bumble, think hostel, couch surfing, and then think Airbnb, VRBO accommodation platform. We kind of sit in the middle of those three things. So the host is really the organizer, whether they're on, like, obviously, I think guests will have a better experience if the host is on site, but they don't have to be on site. So no, you don't have to be there, and you can completely do an arbitrage. So you can have somebody responsible for it. And it doesn't just have to be a house, right? It literally can be a yacht. It can be a catamaran. So it can be anything where I want to create a bunking pod. The other thing, which is kind of cool, and I think it's a great way if people want to test the market, is you can create what we call as a wish pod. So, I've always kind of wanted to go to Alaska, live in an igloo, check out the Northern Lights. My wife is not into it at all. I don't have any friends that are into it at all. So I can create a wish pod, say, I want to go to Alaska, January or February, igloo for 2 weeks, looking for 4 to 6 people. It'll be $1,500 to $2,000, and people can click they're interested. I can even add a little poll so that I can kind of narrow what I want to look for, like what kind of igloo like I want to have. If that's a thing, right? So a warm igloo,
yeah. Wood stove.
And then when you get enough people interested, then you can convert it to a bunking pod. So even as an investor, I'm thinking about doing shared living. I'm thinking about doing it in this area. You know what? I'll throw up a wish pod, float that around for a while. If I get enough interest, boom. Okay. So it's a nice way to test things.
Mm-hmm. No, I like it. It's a very interesting platform. And
thank you.
Yeah, no, it's I think there's some good room for this. And I think that there's a lot of people that could to find a way to leverage it.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Yeah. So we've been in development almost a year. Right now we're in beta testing, and we're launching in February. So we're pretty excited for that.
Do you think that COVID's going to make that launch a little bit more difficult right now? Or do you think it's, I know there is the COVID screening for this app or whatever, but just that we're still in, I'm in Ontario right now, we're kind of relocking down. Do you think that's going to be an issue with the whole thing?
Yeah, really good question. So we have two launch plans. One is if there's COVID starting to go away is an issue.
Yeah.
Or one, it's still an issue. And if it's an issue, that just means we're going to target the roommate space more than the travel space. So, I mean, if you look at New York City, London, 60% of people live with roommates. And when we talk to people, especially the ladies there, I mean, they love this, right? Because at least now they've got a way to kind of at least know if somebody's vetted or there's something. Right now they have nothing.
Yeah.
They're going on Facebook and they're playing Russian roulette, I guess. So anyways, doesn't work out too well. So we'll focus on that, and we'll also focus on the student living as well. So working with the different universities, and then we can drive traffic even to potential customers. So yeah, so that's our COVID plan. We have two plans.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So we're building this kind of fragmented, like-minded community. Nobody's ever really consolidated that before, right? So you're building this community of like-minded people, a lot of them single.
Yeah.
How do you leverage that? So what we're doing is we're building Bunking Ventures. So what Bunking Ventures is, it's the real estate side. So we're focused on buying destination real estate. So think Costa Rica, Thailand, Greece, Mont Tremblant. So we buy the real estate, kind of 5 bedrooms to 30 bedrooms, convert it to shared living. So as soon as we convert it, so if it's an Airbnb, great. But now when we convert it to shared living, we can get a 30 to 40% revenue bump just on that basis, because now we're either renting by the room or by the bed. And the other thing we're able to do is we're able to increase utilization, because if you look at a lot of these destination places, they've got 3 or 4 bad months. It's all based on weather.
Yep.
We think we can fill that 3 or 4 months based on an interest. So it could be a vegan thing, could be a yoga thing, could be a Star Wars thing, whatever it is. So we can really leverage the technology that we're building that can manage the spaces and the community that we're building to help fill these beds. So that's what we're doing on the Bunking Ventures side.
Interesting. And it just made me pop in my head too, is you talk about long-term real estate compared to Airbnb, and it's because you're severing it into smaller pieces that you can charge more per piece, and it works out, right? That you can make more money doing it that way. And now you've taken the Airbnb and chopped it up to be even smaller, so you can take more money off of the Airbnb. And if you do the Bunking Ventures, you could kind of go right from the start, skip the Airbnb and split it right off the start, and you won't have to give the chunk to Airbnb.
Exactly. And you're not paying the big fees either. So that's, I think that's another benefit. Yeah. And it's safer living. If you think about bunking, everybody in the place is vetted. Airbnb, only the guest is vetted. There could be 8 people in the space. So from a landlord's perspective, it's actually a better, I think you'd worry less about having any problems in the space.
Yeah, it's interesting, and you can put your own criteria for what you're looking for.
Yeah, all ladies, all people over 50, whatever you want. So yeah.
All right, Steve. People wanted to track you down. How do they do so?
You know what? Go to bunking.com and there's a form there, or Steve Cody, Cody on LinkedIn. That's where I spend a lot of time. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
All right, sir. Thank you.